Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about something pretty incredible. What it was really like to live on a medieval farm as a peasant. And trust me, by the time we're done, you're going to be real grateful for that mattress you're lying on. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. All right, find that cozy spot, take a nice slow breath and just let your body sink into whatever you're lying on. We're heading back to England around the year 1500 and trust me, you're going to be real grateful for modern life by the time we're done. So congratulations, you just woke up in Tudor England. Your eyes open to near darkness. The air is cool and thick with wood smoke that hangs in layers throughout your small single-room house. You're not on a bed, not like anything you'd recognise. You're lying on a straw-filled mattress placed directly on the packed earth floor. The straw pokes through the rough linen casing, scratching at your skin through your simple nightshirt. Your back aches from the uneven surface. Around you, the rest of your family stirs, your father and mother, your 3 siblings, all crowded into this tiny space. The youngest, just 4 years old, snuggles against your mother for warmth. Your older brother is already up, stoking the small fire in the centre of the room. There's no chimney, just a hole in the thatch roof that sometimes works to draw the smoke upward. Most of it just hangs in the air. You've lived with it so long you barely notice anymore. Good news. It's spring in England, so the bitter cold of winter has passed. Bad news. Spring means it's time for the hardest work of the year to begin. Outside, a cockerel crows, announcing the dawn. The sound is joined by the gentle lowing of your family's cow and the snuffling of pigs from the animal pen attached to one end of your house. That's right, in Tudor England your animals often shared your living space, or at least lived right next door. The heat from their bodies helped keep the house warm in winter. The smell? Well, that was just part of life. Up, your father says. There's ploughing to be done. You rub the sleep from your eyes and sit up. Your legs are stiff from yesterday's labour. As a peasant farmer in 1500, there's no such thing as a weekend, no paid vacation, no sick leave. There's just work, sunrise to sunset, with only Sundays off for church. And even then, after church, there were still animals to tend. The floor beneath your bare feet is cold and slightly damp. Your mother is already at the fire, stirring a pot of pottage, a thick porridge made from whatever vegetables and grains were available. Today it's mostly barley with a few dried peas thrown in. If you're lucky, there might be a small piece of salted pork for flavour. Meat is precious, saved for special occasions or used sparingly to add taste to otherwise bland meals. You pull on your clothes, the same ones you wore yesterday and the day before that. A simple linen shirt, woolen hose for your legs held up by a cord tied around your waist, and a woolen tunic that reaches to your knees. The wool is scratchy against your skin, nothing like the soft fabrics we're used to today. It was probably sheared from your own sheep, spun into thread by your mother and sisters during the long winter evenings, and woven on a neighbour's loom in exchange for some of your family's barley. Eat quickly, your mother says, handing you a wooden bowl of steaming pottage. Your father needs help with the oxen. You gulp down the hot, bland mixture, scooping it up with a piece of dark bread left over from yesterday's baking. The bread is hard and starting to go stale. But that's normal. Fresh bread is a luxury, baked perhaps once a week in the communal oven that serves your entire village. Outside, the morning air is fresh and cool. Dew clings to the grass, and the first rays of sunlight are just beginning to peek over the distant hills. Your village is small, maybe 30 households clustered around a central green with the parish church at one end. Beyond the houses lie the fields, vast open spaces divided into strips. Some belong to your family, some to your neighbours, and a good portion to the local monastery that owns much of the land in your area. Your father is already in the small barn attached to your house, harnessing the oxen. These animals are incredibly valuable, the medieval equivalent of a tractor. Without them, ploughing would be nearly impossible, but most peasant families couldn't afford a full team of oxen on their own. So your father shares his two with another family, and together they have enough animals to pull the heavy wooden plough through the tough soil. Take the lead, your father says, handing you a stick. Your job is to walk in front of the oxen, guiding them in a straight line while your father handles the plough behind. It's harder than it sounds. Oxen are stubborn creatures, and if they decide to veer off course, there's not much your 11-year-old frame can do about it. The wooden yoke settles over the oxen's shoulders. It's a simple device, but ingenious, designed to distribute the weight of the plough across the animal's powerful shoulders rather than their necks, allowing them to pull with their full strength. As you lead the animals out to the field, you pass other villagers beginning their day. A woman draws water from the communal well. 2 young girls drive geese toward the village pond. An old man repairs the wattle fence around his garden plot. Everyone has a task, a role to play in this tightly knit community where survival depends on cooperation. Your family's main field lies about a quarter-mile from the village. It's not a single large plot like modern farms, but a collection of strips scattered across the 3 great open fields that surround the village. This strange arrangement is the result of the open field system that dominates English agriculture in 1500. We'll start with the barley field today, your father says. This refers to one of the 3 large fields that encircle your village. In the 3-field system, one field grows wheat or rye planted last autumn. Another grows spring crops like barley or oats, which you're planting now, and the third lies fallow, empty, giving the soil a chance to recover its fertility. You reach your first strip in the spring field. It's long and narrow, about an acre in size, roughly the area that could be ploughed in one day. On either side are the strips belonging to your neighbours. The whole field looks like a giant patchwork quilt with dozens of strips running side by side. Ready? Your father asks, positioning the plough at the edge of the field. You nod, raising your stick to guide the oxen. The plough your father uses is a heavy wooden implement with an iron-tipped coulter that cuts deep into the soil. It's a massive improvement over the simple scratch ploughs used in earlier centuries. This mouldboard plough doesn't just scratch the surface, it turns the soil over, burying weeds and bringing fresh earth to the top. It's perfect for the heavy clay soils of northern Europe, though it requires tremendous strength from both the oxen and the ploughman to keep it moving. Walk on, your father calls, and you tap the lead ox with your stick. The animals strain against the yoke, muscles rippling under their hides. The plough jerks forward and the real work begins. Ploughing is brutal labour. Your father must use all his strength to keep the plough cutting at the right depth. Too shallow and the weeds won't be properly buried. Too deep and the oxen might not be able to pull it at all. His hands grip the wooden handles tightly, his back bent with the effort. By the end of the day, he'll be exhausted, every muscle aching. Your job is simpler, but still demanding. You must keep the oxen moving in a perfectly straight line, ensuring that no valuable soil is wasted. The animals move slowly, deliberately, their breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. One step after another, yard by yard, the dark earth turns over behind you, revealing worms and beetles that quickly attract the attention of the birds. Rooks and crows follow behind the plough, feasting on the suddenly exposed insects. Hour after hour, you walk backward and forward across the field. The sun rises higher, warming your back through your woolen tunic. Your father stops occasionally to clear clods of earth from the plough or to give the oxen a brief rest. But there's no real break. The day's work must be completed before sunset. Other villagers are working their own strips nearby. A man about your father's age guides a harrow, a wooden frame set with iron teeth that breaks up the clods of earth after ploughing. Two boys, not much older than you, scatter seeds by hand, reaching into bags hung around their necks and casting the precious barley grains in a wide arc. Sowing too thickly wastes seed, too thinly results in a poor harvest. It takes years of practice to get it just right. By midday, your stomach is growling. Your mother appears at the edge of the field, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. It's a simple meal. More bread, a piece of cheese, perhaps an apple saved from last autumn's harvest. You sit in the shade of a hedgerow to eat, grateful for the brief rest. The cheese is sharp and salty, made from your own cow's milk. The bread is dry and must be dipped in a small flask of ale to soften it enough to chew. Yes, ale, even for children. In medieval England, water was often unsafe to drink, potentially contaminated by human and animal waste. Ale, with its alcohol content, was safer. The ale you drink is weak, home brewed by your mother from some of last year's barley crop. It's cloudy and sour. Nothing like modern beer, but it quenches your thirst. The meal is over too quickly, and soon you're back at work. The afternoon stretches endlessly before you, each furrow seeming longer than the last. Your legs ache from walking, your arms from controlling the oxen, but there's no alternative. This work must be done if your family is to eat in the coming year. As the sun begins to sink toward the horizon, you finally reach the end of your family's strip. Your father unhooks the plough, patting the oxen's sweaty flanks in appreciation of their hard work. The animals will need to be fed and watered before they can rest. Their well-being is critical to your family's survival. "Good work today," your father says, offering a rare word of praise. "Tomorrow we'll harrow and sow." The walk back to the village seems twice as long when you're exhausted. The oxen plod slowly, their heads hanging low. Other villagers are also returning home, tools slung over their shoulders, their faces etched with the same tiredness you feel. As you near the village, you hear the church bell ringing. It's not calling people to prayer, but marking the end of the working day, one of the many ways the church gives rhythm to medieval life. The sound is somehow comforting, a reminder that even this long day has an end. Your mother has been busy while you were in the fields. The house smells of herbs and vegetables cooking. She's prepared more pottage for the evening meal, but tonight there's a small piece of bacon added to the pot, a luxury your family can only afford occasionally. Your younger siblings have spent the day helping her with household chores, collecting firewood, tending the vegetable garden that provides much of your family's food, feeding the chickens that give you eggs. Before eating, everyone must wash, not in the modern sense with soap and running water, but by rinsing hands and face with water carried from the village well. Hygiene in medieval times is basic at best. You might have a proper bath a few times a year, usually in summer when the water isn't freezing cold. The rest of the time, you make do with quick rinses of the dirtiest parts of your body. The evening meal is the main one of the day, and the whole family gathers around the small table. Your father says a simple prayer. Religion is deeply woven into every aspect of medieval life. Then everyone digs in, scooping up the hot pottage with wooden spoons or pieces of bread. There's rarely enough to feel truly full, but it's usually sufficient to keep hunger at bay. After eating, there's still work to be done. Animals must be fed and secured for the night. Tools need cleaning and repair. But as darkness falls, options for activity become limited. There's no electricity, of course, just the dim light from the central fire and perhaps a rush light or two. Made from rushes dipped in animal fat, these primitive candles give off a smoky, flickering light barely bright enough to see by. This is the time for stories, for conversation, for planning the next day's work. Your father discusses the progress of ploughing with your older brother. Your mother teaches your sister a new stitch for mending clothes. The youngest children play quietly with simple toys. A doll made from scraps of fabric, a wooden top that spins when you pull a string. As the evening deepens, weariness overtakes everyone. The day begins at dawn and physical labour fills most waking hours. Sleep comes easily to medieval peasants. Your mother spreads the sleeping pallets on the floor around the central hearth. The fire is banked for the night, dampened so it won't go out completely but won't burn too fiercely either. Starting a new fire from scratch is difficult and time-consuming. It's much easier to keep an existing one going. You settle onto your pallet, pulling a rough woolen blanket over you. Your younger siblings are already asleep, their breathing deep and regular. Outside, an owl hoots, and in the distance, a dog barks. These night sounds are familiar, comforting in their way. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, more ploughing, more harrowing, more sowing. The work of a medieval peasant farmer follows the rhythm of the seasons, an endless cycle of planting and harvesting, of struggle and, with luck, modest reward. It's a hard life by modern standards, filled with physical discomfort and constant labour, but it's also deeply connected to the natural world, to the community around you, to the turning of the seasons. As sleep begins to claim you, you shift slightly, finding that perfect spot as the weight of the day settles into your muscles. Your breathing naturally slows, in and out. The smoky air of the cottage fills your lungs as you drift deeper into comfort, and the image of those freshly ploughed furrows stays with you. Dark earth turned over to receive the seed that will, with hard work and good fortune, become the bread that sustains your family through another year. The next morning arrives all too quickly. The first pale light of dawn filters through the gaps in your cottage walls. No need for alarm clocks in Tudor England. The roosters handle that job just fine. Your body aches from yesterday's labour, but there's no time to lie in. The growing season waits for no one. Your father is already up, stoking the fire that's been carefully smouldering all night. Letting it go out completely would be a disaster. Striking a new flame with flint and steel is time-consuming and tricky. Better to keep a fire alive continuously, banking it down at night so it doesn't consume too much precious fuel. The monastery's steward will be making his rounds today, your father mentions as he chews a crust of yesterday's bread. This news puts a slight tension in the air. Your family doesn't own this land. Almost nobody in the village does. Most of you are tenants of the local Benedictine monastery, which owns vast tracts of land throughout the region. Being a tenant in Tudor England means owing both rent and service. Your family pays partly in coin, partly in produce from your farm, and partly in labour, working directly on the monastery's own lands for a certain number of days each year. It's a complex relationship, neither entirely free nor entirely bound. The monastery provides protection, access to its mill for grinding grain, and sometimes assistance in hard times. In return, you provide a significant portion of what you produce. The steward is the monastery's representative, the man who collects the rents, inspects the fields, and makes sure the tenants are maintaining their properties properly. He's not a monk himself, but a layman employed to handle the worldly affairs of the abbey. He can be fair or harsh, depending on his character and the policies of his employers. Make sure the barley strips look well tended, your mother advises, handing you a small bowl of pottage for breakfast, and the sheep need to be moved to fresh pasture. The sheep, they're the most valuable animals your family owns. Their wool is like gold in Tudor England, the foundation of the nation's wealth. England produces the finest wool in Europe, and the monasteries are major players in the wool trade. Your small flock of Southdown sheep with their fine fleeces will provide not only wool to sell but also yarn for your family's clothing. After your quick breakfast, you head out with your older brother to move the sheep. They've spent the night in a fold near the house, a simple enclosure of wattle fencing designed to protect them from wolves and thieves. Now they need to be taken to graze on the common pasture land that surrounds the village. Shepherding is actually one of the more pleasant tasks on a medieval farm. While the sheep graze, you have time to sit and rest, perhaps even to daydream a little. Your brother brings a simple wooden flute he's carved himself and practices tunes while watching the flock. Music is one of the few recreations available to peasant families. Simple instruments, folk songs passed down through generations, dances at village festivals. The morning sun climbs higher, warming your face as you sit on a grassy knoll watching the sheep. From here you can see much of the village and its surrounding fields. The strips of land in various stages of cultivation create a patchwork effect across the landscape. Some are freshly ploughed, dark earth exposed to the sun. Others show the first green shoots of winter wheat, planted last autumn and now growing strong. The third field lies fallow, resting this year but still being used for grazing livestock. This three-field system is the backbone of medieval agriculture. By rotating crops and allowing one field to rest each year, farmers maintain the soil's fertility. It's not based on scientific understanding. Nobody in your village knows about nitrogen fixation or soil chemistry, but on generations of observed results. This field grows better wheat if we plant barley in it the year before. That field needs to rest this year because the crops were poor last season. Knowledge passed down, father to son, mother to daughter. In the distance, you spot a figure on horseback approaching the village. Even from here, you can recognize the steward by his distinctive clothing, finer than a peasant's garb, but not as elaborate as a nobleman's. He rides directly to the manor house, a structure somewhat larger and more substantial than the peasant cottages, where he'll meet with the village reeve, a peasant elected to represent the community in dealings with the monastery. "We should check the edges of the barley field," your brother suggests, getting to his feet. "Make sure no weeds are growing there before the steward inspects it." Managing weeds is a constant battle in medieval farming. Without herbicides, every unwanted plant must be removed by hand. It's tedious, back-breaking work, but necessary. A field overrun with weeds will yield a poor harvest, and your family can't afford that. You leave the sheep grazing under the watchful eye of the village's communal shepherd, an old man who can no longer handle heavier farm work but knows every trick for managing a flock, and head to the barley field. The strips your family ploughed and sowed yesterday are already showing tiny signs of life as the barley seeds begin to germinate in the warm spring soil. Moving slowly along the edges of your strips, you and your brother pull any weeds you find, tossing them into a pile to be burned later or fed to the pigs. Nothing is wasted in a medieval farm economy. Even weeds have their uses. By midday, the sun is high and hot, your back aches from bending, and your stomach reminds you it's time for the midday meal. Most peasant families eat their main meal around noon. When daylight is precious, it makes no sense to wait until evening for your biggest source of energy. You return to the cottage to find your mother tending her garden. This small plot next to your home is her domain, and it provides much of the family's food. Cabbages, onions, garlic and herbs grow in neat rows. Later in the summer, there will be peas and beans. These vegetables, along with the ubiquitous pottage, form the staple diet of your family. Meat appears rarely. Perhaps a chicken on special days, a piece of bacon to flavour the pot, or a rabbit caught in a snare. The steward's with your father in the barley field, your mother tells you. Take this to them. She hands you a small wooden flask of ale and a bundle containing bread and cheese. Walking back to the field, you pass other villagers going about their daily tasks. A woman leads a cow to the village pond for water. 2 men repair a section of fencing that came down in last week's storm. A group of children gather firewood along the edge of the forest that borders the village lands. Everyone has a role, even the youngest members of the community. You spot your father and the steward walking slowly along the edge of the field, deep in conversation. The steward gestures toward the newly sown barley strips, then points to something in a leather-bound book he carries, perhaps recording the amount of seed sown or the expected yield. You approach carefully, waiting for a pause in their conversation before offering the food and drink. The steward nods acknowledgement but doesn't speak to you directly. Children in Tudor England are firmly at the bottom of the social hierarchy, expected to work but not to participate in adult conversations unless specifically invited. 3 more days of labour owed at the Abbey's home farm next week, your father says, once the steward has moved on to inspect another family's strips. They're clearing new land for planting. This is part of your family's rent, providing labour directly to the monastery when needed. It's not something your father enjoys, as it takes him away from your own farm during crucial growing times. But refusing isn't an option. The monastery owns the land, and the terms of tenancy are clear. After the midday meal, it's back to work. Spring is the busiest season on a medieval farm, with ploughing, sowing, lambing, and countless other tasks all happening at once. Every daylight hour must be used efficiently. Your afternoon task is to help your mother with the flax. Flax is a crop grown specifically for its fibres, which can be spun into linen thread. The process of turning flax into usable fibre is long and complex, involving soaking the stalks in water to rot away the soft parts, then beating them to separate the fibres. Today, you're spreading already processed flax fibres on a wooden board and drawing them through a heckle, a comb-like tool with sharp metal teeth that further separates and aligns the fibres before spinning. It's precise work that requires concentration, but isn't as physically demanding as field labour. Your fingers move rhythmically, drawing the pale yellow fibres through the heckle again and again until they're soft and silky. As you work, your mother spins already processed fibres into thread using a drop spindle, a simple stick with a weighted whirl at the bottom that spins like a top as it hangs from the developing thread. The spinning wheel exists in 1500, but is still a relatively expensive tool that many peasant families can't afford. The drop spindle is older technology, slower but effective in skilled hands. The thread your mother spins will eventually be woven into linen for shirts, sheets, and other household items. Linen is cooler than wool, making it preferable for summer clothing or for garments worn next to the skin. The finest grades of linen might be sold for extra income, while coarser grades are kept for family use. The steward seemed pleased with the barley sowing, your mother comments as she works. Perhaps we'll have a good harvest this year. A good harvest means survival. A poor one means hunger. It's as simple as that in the precarious economy of a medieval farm. One bad season can wipe out the small surplus a family might have built up over years of careful management. 2 bad seasons in a row can mean starvation. Father says we owe 3 days at the Abbey's home farm next week, you tell her. She nods, her face showing no reaction. This is simply the reality of your lives, the obligations that come with tenancy. We'll need to work harder here to make up for it, is all she says. By late afternoon, your arms ache from the repetitive motion of heckling flax. Your mother sets aside her spindle and begins preparations for the evening meal. The pot hanging over the central hearth needs attention, more vegetables added, the fire built up to bring it to a simmer. Your younger siblings return from their day's tasks, gathering firewood, helping to tend the community's geese, running errands for neighbours. Each has contributed in their own way to the family's survival. In a medieval peasant household, everyone works from the time they can walk until the day they die. Childhood, as a protected time of play and education, is a luxury that won't exist for centuries. As the sun begins to sink toward the horizon, your father and older brother return from the fields. They've spent the afternoon continuing the ploughing, working on another of your family's scattered strips. Their faces are weathered from constant exposure to the elements, their hands calloused from years of gripping tools. They move with the slow, deliberate gait of men who have pushed their bodies to the limit of endurance day after day. The evening meal is similar to breakfast and lunch. More pottage, more bread. But tonight there's a surprise. Your youngest sister proudly produces a handful of wild strawberries she found growing at the edge of the forest. They're tiny compared to modern cultivated varieties, but intensely flavourful. Divided among the family members, each person gets just 2 or 3 berries, a rare sweet treat in a diet dominated by grains and vegetables. After eating, your father checks his tools by the fading daylight. The iron tip of the plough needs attention, a slight bend that must be straightened by the village blacksmith. Iron tools are precious in medieval England, representing a significant investment for a peasant family. They're passed down through generations, repaired rather than replaced whenever possible. Your mother sorts through dried herbs hanging from the rafters, selecting those needed for tomorrow's cooking and for treating minor ailments. In a world without professional medical care for ordinary people, knowledge of medicinal herbs is essential. A fever, a cut that becomes infected, a winter cough, all must be treated with remedies prepared at home. As darkness falls, the family gathers around the hearth. The day's work is mostly done, though there are always small tasks that can be accomplished by firelight, mending clothes, carving wooden implements, preparing vegetables for tomorrow's meals. Conversation flows, focusing mainly on practical matters, the condition of the fields, the health of the livestock, plans for tomorrow's labour. Your father mentions that the nearby market town will have a fair in 2 weeks' time. This is exciting news, a chance to sell some of your family's produce, perhaps to buy items you can't produce yourselves, and to enjoy the rare entertainments that travelling performers bring to such events. For a peasant family whose lives are ordinarily confined to the village and its immediate surroundings, a trip to the market town is a significant outing. As the evening progresses, your eyelids grow heavy. The physical labour of the day has exhausted you completely. Your mother spreads the sleeping pallets around the hearth, and one by one, family members settle down for the night. There's no privacy in a medieval peasant home. Everyone sleeps in the same space, parents and children together. The fire is banked once more, and darkness envelops the cottage, broken only by the faint red glow of the embers. Outside, an owl hoots, hunting mice in the fields. The distant barking of dogs gradually fades as the village settles into sleep. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, more ploughing, more sowing, more endless labour to coax food from the soil. But for now, there's rest. Your muscles gradually release their tension as you lie on your simple pallet. The straw crackles slightly as you shift position, finding that perfect spot where your body can truly relax. The smoky scent of the cottage, so sharp to modern noses, is simply home to you, familiar and comforting. You focus on your breathing, feeling it slow naturally as sleep approaches, in and out, deep and steady. The weight of the day's work settles into your bones, a pleasant heaviness that pulls you towards slumber. You're vaguely aware of your family around you, their breathing creating a gentle rhythm in the darkness. Safe. Together. Your eyes close as the images of the day, furrows in dark earth, sheep grazing on green hills, flax fibres sliding through your fingers, begin to blur and fade. Your body becomes weightless, drifting deeper into that perfectly comfortable state where wakefulness gives way to dreams, and in that moment between one breath and the next, the steward approaches your cottage again, this time with news that will change everything. Morning comes with a pounding on your cottage door. It's barely light outside, the pale grey of early dawn just beginning to filter through the gaps in the walls. Your father rises quickly, wrapping a woolen cloak around his shoulders against the morning chill. The steward stands at the door, his face serious in the dim light. The abbot requires additional labour at the monastery's home farm, he announces without preamble. 3 men from each household for the next 5 days. The north field is being expanded. Your father nods, his face carefully blank. This is unwelcome news, 5 days away from your own fields during the crucial spring planting season could spell disaster for your family's harvest. But refusing isn't an option. The labour service is part of your tenancy agreement, and the monastery has the right to call upon it as needed. My son and I will come, your father says, but that's only 2. The steward's eyes scan the interior of your cottage, landing on your older brother who's now sitting up on his sleeping pallet. He looks strong enough, the steward says with a nod. 3 men at the abbey gates by prime. With that, he turns and strides away to deliver the same message to the next household. Prime, the first canonical hour of the day, around 6 a.m. The church bells mark the hours in medieval England, dividing the day into segments for prayer that everyone uses as time references, whether they're monks or farmers. Your mother is already up, stirring the embers of last night's fire back to life. Her face is worried as she prepares a hasty breakfast. 5 days of labour for the monastery means 5 days when your own land lies untended. The timing couldn't be worse. Spring planting can't wait. We'll manage, she says, though her voice lacks conviction. The girls and I will continue with the barley sowing, and perhaps we can hire Thomas's boy to help with the ploughing. Thomas is a neighbour whose oldest son sometimes works for other families for a small payment, usually in food rather than coin, which is scarce in the village economy. Your father eats quickly, his movements brusque with barely suppressed frustration. He knows better than to complain openly about the monastery's demands. Such talk could reach the wrong ears and create problems for your family, but the unfairness of the situation is clear to everyone. The monastery, with its dozens of lay servants and extensive lands, chooses the most critical time in the farming year to pull men away from their own fields. Take extra bread, your mother says, wrapping dark loaves in a cloth. The abbey may feed you at midday, but it won't be enough for men working from dawn till dusk. By the time the sun properly rises, you, your father, and your older brother are walking the 2 miles to the monastery's home farm, the large agricultural estate attached directly to the abbey, where the monks produce food for their own consumption and for sale. It's worked primarily by hired labourers and lay brothers, men who have joined the monastic community but haven't taken full religious vows. But when major projects are undertaken, the monastery calls upon the labour service owed by its tenants. You're not alone on the road. From every direction, men and boys are converging on the abbey, 3 from each household, just as the steward demanded. There's little conversation as you walk. Everyone understands what this labour service means for their own farms and families. The shared burden creates a grim solidarity. The monastery rises ahead, its stone walls and towers dominating the landscape. Founded 3 centuries earlier, it has grown wealthy through donations of land, shrewd management of its estates, and participation in the lucrative wool trade. The monks themselves may take vows of personal poverty, but the institution they serve is rich and powerful. You pass through the outer gate into a bustling courtyard. Lay servants move purposefully about their tasks, carrying bundles of firewood, leading horses to the stables, hauling sacks of grain to the mill. A group of novices, young men preparing to take their monastic vows, crosses the yard in a neat line, heads bowed on their way to morning prayers. A lay brother directs you and the other arriving workers to the home farm, which lies just beyond the monastery walls. Here, the ordered tranquility of the monastic enclosure gives way to the familiar sights and sounds of agricultural labour. Fields stretch to the horizon, some already green with growing crops, others freshly ploughed. Barns and storehouses stand in neat rows. Cattle graze in enclosed pastures. It's like your village, but on a much larger scale and with considerably more resources. The monastery's bailiff, the official in charge of the home farm, is a stern-faced man with a wooden tally stick in his hand. He records each worker's name on the tally as they arrive, making small notches in the wood with a knife. These tallies serve as records of labour service rendered, ensuring that each tenant family fulfills its obligations. "You three, to the north field," he says when your father gives your family name. Brother Oswald is overseeing the clearing work. The north field turns out to be less a field than a section of woodland in the process of being converted to arable land. This is back-breaking work, felling trees, grubbing out stumps, removing rocks and boulders. It's the kind of labour that requires many hands working together, which explains why the monastery has called in its tenants. Brother Oswald, a stocky man with a weather-beaten face despite his religious vocation, assigns tasks with brisk efficiency. Your father is put to work with an axe, joining a team of men felling smaller trees. Your brother joins a group using heavy iron-tipped pikes to lever stumps from the ground. You, being younger and less strong, are assigned to the brush-clearing detail, using a billhook to cut away undergrowth and small saplings. The work is relentless. Brother Oswald allows brief breaks for water drawn from a nearby stream, but otherwise expects continuous labour. The monastery's bell tower is visible in the distance, and each time it rings the hours, you count in your head, measuring the passage of time until you can return home. By midday, your arms ache from the constant swinging of the billhook. Blisters have formed on your palms despite the calluses built up from years of farm work. Around you, men grunt with effort as they attack stumps and trees. The sound of axes biting into wood creates a steady rhythm punctuated by the crash of falling timber. As the bells ring for sext, the 6th hour, around noon, Brother Oswald calls a halt for the midday meal. The monastery provides bread and ale for the workers, but it's plain fare, coarser bread than what most families bake at home, and ale so weak it's barely worth the name. Your father was right to bring extra food from home. You sit in the shade of a half-felled oak, chewing on bread and a piece of hard cheese, watching as Brother Oswald moves among the workers, checking progress and making notes on a small wax tablet. He's a lay brother rather than a full monk, evident from his practical work clothes rather than the full religious habit, but he carries himself with the authority granted by the monastery. They say the abbot's building a new granary. A man sitting nearby comments quietly, twice the size of the old one, expecting good harvests for years to come, apparently. Your father grunts non-committally. Speculation about the monastery's plans is interesting, but potentially dangerous. Better to keep your head down, do the work required, and return to your own fields as soon as possible. The afternoon brings more of the same, cutting, clearing, hauling. The cleared area gradually expands as dozens of men labour together. It's impressive how quickly the landscape changes under the assault of so many hands, but you can't help wondering how many family fields are lying untended while this work progresses. As the sun begins to sink toward the horizon, Brother Oswald finally calls a halt. Return at prime tomorrow, he instructs. The work continues. The walk home seems twice as long when your body aches from head to toe. Your father and brother move with the same stiff-legged gait as you, muscles protesting after a day of unusual labour. Clearing woodland requires different movements, different strengths than the familiar work of ploughing and sowing. You arrive home to find your mother and sisters still in the fields. They've managed to sow another strip of barley, working with hand tools since they lack the strength to handle the plough and oxen alone. It's slow work, and their progress is modest compared to what could have been accomplished with the men present, but it's something. "How bad is it?" your father asks, surveying their work. "We'll manage," your mother repeats, though the worry lines around her eyes have deepened. "Thomas's boy is coming tomorrow to help with the ploughing. I've promised him a cheese and some of this year's honey harvest." The evening meal is subdued, everyone too tired for much conversation. Plans are made for tomorrow. Who will handle which tasks? How to divide the limited labour available to cover the most critical work. Your youngest sister will need to take over some of your usual chores while you're at the monastery. Your mother and older sister will continue with the sewing. It's a precarious balancing act, trying to fulfill your obligations to the monastery while still tending your own land. Sleep comes quickly that night, your exhausted body surrendering to unconsciousness almost as soon as you lie down. The next day brings a repeat of the first, the long walk to the monastery at dawn, the relentless labour of clearing land, the weary return at dusk, and the next day, and the next. By the fifth and final day of your required service, the north field has been transformed. What was dense woodland is now a rough cleared space ready for the final preparation before planting. Stumps have been grubbed out, undergrowth cleared, the larger trees felled and cut into manageable lengths for use as building timber or firewood. Nothing is wasted in the monastery's efficient economy. Brother Oswald seems satisfied with the progress. "The abbot will be pleased," he tells the assembled workers as he dismisses them for the last time. "Your service is complete for now." For now, the words hang in the air, a reminder that the monastery can call upon your labour again whenever it chooses. But at least this particular obligation has been fulfilled, and you can return full-time to your own farm. The walk home on that final day has a different energy. Despite the physical exhaustion, there's a sense of relief among the men from your village. Conversation flows more freely, touching on what needs to be done in the neglected home fields, how much catching up is required. "We'll need to work double time for the next week," your father says. "The barley must all be sown before the next full moon if we're to have a decent harvest." The following morning brings the luxury of waking in your own home with a full day to devote to your family's land. Your mother has managed remarkably well during your absence, organising the women and younger children to continue essential tasks. But there's no denying that 5 days of male labour have been lost at a critical time. Your father hitches the oxen to the plough with a renewed sense of urgency. There's no time to waste. The weather is favourable now, but spring in England is notoriously changeable. Rain could delay planting further, and every day counts when growing seasons are short. For the next week, you work from first light until you can no longer see the ground in front of you. The entire family functions as a single unit, each person taking on whatever tasks they can handle. Your younger siblings help with weeding and carrying seed. Your mother and sister sow in the furrows your father creates with the plough. Your older brother harrows the sown fields to cover the precious seed. You move between tasks as needed, filling in wherever an extra pair of hands can speed the work. The three-field system that shapes medieval agriculture means that your family's land is scattered across the village fields. Some strips lie fallow this year, resting to regain fertility. Others contain winter wheat, planted last autumn and now growing strongly. The remaining strips must be sown with spring crops, primarily barley, but also peas, beans and oats. Each crop has its own requirements, its own timing, its own techniques for planting and tending. By the end of the week, you've nearly caught up to where you should be in the agricultural calendar. The barley is sown, the peas are in the ground, and preparations are underway for planting vegetables in the small garden plot beside your cottage. The rhythm of farm life has been disrupted by the monastery's demands, but not fatally so. On Sunday, work pauses for church. Even in the busiest farming seasons, the Sabbath must be observed. The entire village gathers in the small parish church where the priest, himself paid by the monastery, leads the Latin Mass. Few peasants understand the words, but the rituals are familiar and comforting, marking the passage of weeks and seasons. After church, there's a rare opportunity for the community to gather without labour. Men discuss the condition of the fields and the prospects for harvest. Women exchange news and advice on household matters. Children play simple games in the churchyard. For a few hours, the relentless pressure of agricultural work eases, allowing for human connection beyond the immediate family. Your father speaks with other village men about the monastery's demands and the impact on their own farms. The conversation is careful, subdued. Open criticism of the monastery could lead to trouble, but there's a shared understanding of the challenges, a mutual sympathy for the precarious position you all occupy as tenant farmers. Martin's family is struggling, one man mentions quietly. His wife fell ill while he was at the north field clearing. The barley's barely half sown. Your father nods thoughtfully. We could spare a day this week. Between us all, we might get his strips planted. This is how medieval village communities survive, through mutual support when individual families face crisis. Next month or next year, it might be your family needing help, and the obligation would be repaid. It's an informal system of insurance against disaster in a world where formal safety nets don't exist. As the brief respite of Sunday afternoon draws to a close, you find yourself sitting on the grassy bank beside the village pond, watching ducks paddle across the surface. The sun is warm on your face, the first real hint of summer approaching. For a moment, you can almost forget the constant labour, the precarious existence, the subordination to the monastery's demands. Your younger sister finds you there and sits beside you, her small hand slipping into yours. Mother says it's time to check the beehives, she says, after a moment of companionable silence. The family's 3 beehives, woven from straw into dome shapes and plastered with mud for weatherproofing, stand at the edge of your garden plot. Honey is precious in medieval England, the main sweetener available to ordinary people and an important ingredient in medicines and preserves. Checking the hives is a skilled task that your mother has been teaching you over the past year. You stand, stretching muscles that still ache from the woodland clearing work, and follow your sister back toward the cottage. As you walk, you notice the steward again, riding slowly through the village, making notes on his wax tablet as he inspects the progress of planting. His gaze falls on your family's strips in the common fields, assessing, evaluating. The monastery's oversight is constant, a reminder of who truly controls the land you farm. Your mother is waiting by the beehives, a smoker, a simple clay pot containing smouldering herbs in her hand. The smoke will calm the bees, making it safer to check the hives. She hands you a loose woven fabric to drape over your head and shoulders as protection against stings. Gently now, she instructs as you carefully lift the top from the first hive. Listen to their tone. If it rises, they're agitated. If it remains steady, they're accepting our presence. The low hum of the bees continues at an even pitch as you peer into the hive. Inside, the colony is a marvel of organisation and industry. Thousands of bees move with purpose among the combs they've built, storing honey, tending larvae, serving their queen. It's a complex society, hidden within a simple straw container, a world most people never see or understand. They've made it through the winter well, your mother observes, carefully examining the combs. We should have a good honey harvest this summer if the weather holds fair. A good honey harvest means sweetness in your pottage, medicine for winter coughs, perhaps even a small surplus to sell at market for precious coins. It's one more element in the complex equation of survival on a medieval farm. As you replace the hive cover, your muscles finally start to relax after days of tension. The warm spring air carries the scent of apple blossoms from the small orchard beyond the village. Bees buzz lazily around you, returning to their hive laden with pollen from early flowers. For a moment, there's a perfect stillness, a rare pause in the constant motion of farm life. Your breathing naturally slows, settling deeper into a rhythm that matches the gentle movement of the bees. The weight of obligations to the land, to the monastery, to survival itself eases slightly. You shift, finding that perfect, comfortable spot as your body remembers how to simply be, not just do. And in that moment of rest, you look up to see dark clouds gathering on the horizon, and with them a coming storm that will test everything your family has worked for. The storm clouds build with alarming speed, turning the late afternoon sky from clear blue to threatening grey within an hour. Your father watches them approach, his weathered face creased with worry. "Get the animals secured," he tells your brother. "We're in for a heavy one." Rain is both blessing and curse to the medieval farmer. The right amount at the right time brings life to crops and pastures. Too much, especially at crucial growing stages, can spell disaster. The newly sown barley is particularly vulnerable. Seeds not yet properly rooted can wash away in heavy rain, representing a catastrophic loss of both food and next year's seed stock. The entire family springs into action. Your older brother leads the oxen into their crude shelter beside the cottage. Your mother calls the chickens in for early feeding, ensuring they'll be safely cooped before the rain begins. Your younger siblings help drive the family's precious pig into its sty, a task requiring patience and persistence as the stubborn animal resists their efforts. You help your father hastily dig small drainage channels at the edges of your garden plot, hoping to direct the coming deluge away from the tender young plants. It's a desperate measure, but better than doing nothing. The air grows still and heavy as the storm approaches. Birds fall silent, seeking shelter in the trees surrounding the village. The quality of light changes, casting an eerie yellowish glow across the landscape. In the distance, you hear the first low rumble of thunder. Inside, all of you, your father orders as fat raindrops begin to fall, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. There's nothing more to be done now. The crops are at the mercy of the elements. All you can do is wait and hope. Inside the cottage, your family gathers around the central hearth. The fire provides both light and comfort as darkness falls prematurely under the storm clouds. Rain hammers against the thatch roof, finding its way through in places, forming small drips that must be caught in wooden bowls. Thunder crashes overhead, causing your youngest sister to press against your mother in fear. "It's just God moving his furniture," your mother tells her with a smile, repeating an old folk saying meant to make storms less frightening to children. But the adults exchange worried glances as the rain intensifies. This is more than a passing shower. It's a deluge that could undo days of careful work in the fields. After the delay caused by labour service at the monastery, your family can ill afford further setbacks to spring planting. The storm rages for hours, finally easing around midnight. By then, everyone is asleep except your father, who sits by the dying fire, listening to the gradual lessening of rain on the thatch. Occasionally, he rises to check the bowls catching leaks, emptying them outside the door when they fill. Morning reveals the damage. Your family's carefully sown barley strips lie underwater in places, small pools forming in the lowest parts of the field. Seeds that should be safely covered with a layer of soil are now exposed, some washed away entirely. The drainage furrows between strips have become streams, carrying precious topsoil away. Your father surveys the scene in silence, calculating losses, adjusting plans. The resilience of the medieval farmer isn't a matter of choice, but of necessity. There's no insurance, no government assistance, no modern safety net. When disaster strikes, you adapt or you starve. We'll need more seed, he finally says, and we'll have to replough the worst affected areas. Where will we get more seed? Your mother asks. The family's reserves are already depleted from the spring sowing. I'll speak with the reeve, your father replies. Perhaps the village seed store can spare some. If not, he doesn't finish the thought. If not, your family faces a leaner year ahead with less food and less surplus to sell or to plant next season. The village reeve, the peasant elected to manage communal resources and represent the community to the monastery, is sympathetic but can offer little help. Many families face similar losses from the storm. The village seed store, maintained precisely for such emergencies, is already stretched thin. I can spare you a quarter bushel, the reeve tells your father. No more, others need help too. It's something, but not enough. Your father thanks him anyway, accepting what's offered while mentally recalculating what can be planted and where. Some strips may have to be abandoned entirely this season, left to grow whatever weeds will take hold. It's a bitter decision for a farmer to make, but but practicality demands focus on what can be saved. The next week is a blur of frantic activity. Every member of the family works from dawn until dusk, salvaging what can be saved from the storm's damage. The worst affected strips are reploughed, the remaining seed carefully distributed to cover as much ground as possible. Areas that can't be replanted are reluctantly abandoned, though your father marks them for extra manuring in the autumn, hoping to boost fertility for next year's planting. Throughout the village, similar scenes play out as each family responds to the storm's impact on their lands. It's a reminder of the vulnerability of medieval agriculture to weather events beyond human control. A single storm, a late frost, an early drought, any of these can mean the difference between sufficiency and hunger. Yet amid the hardship, the tight-knit nature of the village community reveals itself. Families with surplus seed share with those most affected. Labour is exchanged freely, with neighbours helping each other repair storm damage. The wealthier peasants, those with larger holdings or specialised skills that bring in extra income, contribute more to those in need, knowing that next time they might be the ones requiring assistance. By the end of the week, the immediate crisis has passed. Most fields have been salvaged in some fashion, though yields will certainly be lower than hoped. Life on the medieval farm returns to its normal rhythm of endless tasks, each dictated by the season and the needs of crops and animals. As May progresses, the days grow longer and warmer. The winter-sown wheat in your family's strips is growing strongly now, the tender green shoots transforming into sturdier stalks. The salvaged barley is also establishing itself, though the stands are thinner than they should be. In the small garden beside your cottage, vegetables are thriving under your mother's careful tending. Cabbages, onions, leeks and peas that will diversify your family's diet through summer and autumn. Your father turns his attention to the family's small orchard, just 6 apple trees and 2 pears growing at the edge of one field strip. The trees are in full bloom now, their white and pink blossoms attracting bees from your hives. A good fruit harvest in the autumn will provide not only fresh eating but also dried fruit for winter and cider that keeps when fresh water might be questionable. "The blossom's heavy this year," he observes, examining the trees. "If the weather holds fair, we should have a good crop." These small compensations, a promising fruit blossom, healthy vegetable seedlings, thriving beehives, help balance the disappointment of the storm-damaged grain fields. Medieval farming is always a calculation of gains and losses, a constant adjustment to conditions beyond control. Your daily routine settles back into its seasonal pattern. Mornings begin at dawn with animal care, feeding chickens, milking the family cow, checking on sheep now grazing in the fallow field. Then comes work appropriate to the season, weeding the growing crops, maintaining drainage ditches, repairing fences and tools. Afternoons might bring specialized tasks, your mother and sisters spinning wool or flax, your father and brother crafting new handles for worn-out tools, you helping with whatever needs an extra pair of hands. Food preparation is a constant activity. With no refrigeration, most meals must be prepared from scratch using whatever is available and in season. Your mother bakes bread once or twice a week in the communal village oven, paying a small fee to the monastery, which owns it. The family's staple pottage bubbles almost continuously in the pot hanging over the central hearth, ingredients added and removed as they cook, creating a perpetually evolving meal. Clean water is a precious commodity. The village well provides drinking water, carried home in wooden buckets, a task often assigned to children. But the well is some distance from your cottage, so water is used sparingly. Washing is minimal by modern standards. Hands and face daily, perhaps, but full body washing is rare. Clothing is worn until visibly dirty, then washed infrequently in the stream that runs through the village, using homemade lye soap that's harsh on both fabrics and skin. As spring advances towards summer, new tasks emerge. The sheep must be sheared, a specialized skill that some villagers perform better than others. Your neighbor Thomas is known for his fast, clean shearing that gets the maximum wool without nicking the animal's skin. Your father arranges to exchange labor with him. Thomas will shear your family's small flock, and in return your father will help repair Thomas's cottage roof. This informal exchange of labour and goods forms the backbone of the village economy. Coin is scarce in rural medieval England, used primarily for paying rent to the monastery and for occasional purchases at markets or fairs. Day-to-day transactions between villagers are more often conducted through barter and labour exchange, a system that builds community interdependence. The sheep shearing takes place in mid-June when the weather is reliably warm. The animals are gathered in a temporary pen near the village green. Thomas works methodically, using iron shears to remove the thick fleeces in one piece where possible. The newly shorn sheep look almost comically small, their pink skin visible through the short wool left behind. The fleeces are a valuable product, potentially the most profitable output from your family's farm. Some will be kept for home use, to be washed, carded, spun, and eventually woven into cloth for family clothing and blankets, but most will be sold either directly to the monastery or at the market in the nearby town. The quality seems good this year, Thomas comments as he finishes the last sheep. Good length, clean, not too many burrs. This is welcome news. Better quality wool means better prices, which means more income for your family. The monastery, deeply involved in the lucrative wool trade, pays well for superior fleeces that can be sold to merchants supplying weavers throughout England and beyond. With the sheep shearing complete, your father turns his attention to the hay meadow, a vital resource for winter feeding of livestock. Unlike the open fields with their scattered strips, hay meadows are often enclosed and more carefully managed. The timing of the hay harvest is critical. Cut too early and the yield is low, too late and the nutritional value declines. The haymaking begins in late June when the grasses are at their peak. It's a communal activity with families working together to cut and dry the hay as quickly as possible. Men swing scythes in a rhythmic pattern, moving steadily across the meadow. Women and children follow behind, using wooden rakes to spread the cut grass for drying and later to gather it into piles. Haymaking is exhausting work, especially in the summer heat, but there's a festive quality to the communal labour. Songs help maintain the rhythm of scything. Stories and jokes pass the time during raking. Children dash about delivering water to thirsty workers. For a few days, the isolation of individual family labour gives way to community effort. The hay, once properly dried, is stored in stacks or, for wealthier peasants, in small barns. It represents security for the coming winter, fodder for the animals that provide milk, wool, labour, and eventually meat. A good hay harvest means livestock will survive the winter in better condition, producing more milk and wool and working more effectively when spring ploughing begins again. Throughout these seasonal activities, the monastery maintains its oversight of village affairs. The steward makes regular visits, inspecting fields, recording progress, ensuring that tenants are maintaining their properties adequately. Rents must be paid, usually quarterly in a combination of cash, produce and labour service. The relationship between monastery and tenants is fundamentally unequal, but it's also symbiotic. Each needs the other to prosper. By early July, the landscape around your village has transformed. Winter-sown grain stands tall in the fields, beginning to turn from green to gold. Spring-sown crops, though less advanced, form a patchwork of different greens across the open fields. Gardens overflow with vegetables. Fruit trees show small, hard fruits that will ripen as summer progresses. The rhythm of growth and harvest that has sustained human communities for millennia continues its steady progression. For children in medieval England, summer brings a slight easing of labour demands. While still expected to contribute to family work, there's occasionally time for play. Simple games with hoops or balls, swimming in the village pond on hot days, exploring the edges of the forest, though never venturing too deep where dangers both real and imagined lurk. You and your siblings develop a game involving throwing sticks to knock apples from a tree, part play, part useful skill for harvesting fruit from higher branches. Your father pretends not to notice this mild mischief, understanding the need for occasional lighten amid the constant work. Just don't damage the good fruit, is his only admonition, and clean up what you knock down. Even play has purpose in the medieval farm economy. Nothing can be wasted, not food, not time, not energy. The fallen apples bruised from your game will feed the family pig, contributing to its growth and eventual value as meat. As July progresses, the winter wheat begins to ripen fully, signalling the approach of the most critical period in the agricultural year, the grain harvest. The timing of this harvest is crucial. Begin too early and the grain isn't properly mature, yielding less flour when milled. Wait too long, and storms might flatten the crop or cause the ripened grain to fall from the stalks, lost to the ground. The entire village watches the wheat fields anxiously, checking daily for signs that the optimal moment for harvest has arrived. When the grain is deemed ready, a judgment based on generations of accumulated knowledge, the reeve announces the start of harvest, and every able-bodied person in the community prepares for the most intense labour of the year. Harvesting tools are prepared, sickles sharpened on whetstones, wooden rakes mended, flails checked for soundness. These tools, simple by modern standards but effective in skilled hands, represent significant investments for peasant families. An iron sickle might be passed down through generations, its handle replaced many times while the precious metal blade endures. The monastery, recognizing the critical importance of a successful harvest to its own income, relaxes some of its regular demands during this period. Labour service is temporarily suspended, allowing tenants to focus entirely on gathering the crop. The parish priest even adjusts the timing of services, holding them very early in the morning or late in the evening so as not to interrupt the day's work. The evening before harvest begins, your family gathers around the hearth for a simple ritual. Your father places his sickle beside the fire, not close enough to damage the wooden handle, but near enough for the metal to warm slightly. Your mother sprinkles a few grains from last year's seed stock into the flames, murmuring a traditional prayer for abundance. It's a practice that blends Christian faith with older customs, seeking divine blessing on the crucial work ahead. As you prepare for sleep that night, your body is already anticipating the demands of tomorrow. Harvest is the ultimate test of endurance for the medieval farmer. Days of constant bending, cutting, gathering, binding from dawn until dusk, with only brief breaks for food and water. Children as young as 7 or 8 participate according to their abilities, everyone understanding that their winter survival depends on gathering every possible grain. You stretch out on your sleeping pallet, feeling the familiar scratch of the straw-filled mattress against your skin. The summer night is warm, requiring only a thin linen sheet for covering. Around you, your family settles into sleep, conserving energy for the challenges ahead. Outside, a gentle breeze rustles through the ripened wheat, creating a soft, whispering sound. An owl calls from the direction of the forest, its haunting cry floating through the darkness. These night sounds are the soundtrack of rural medieval life, unchanging through generations. You shift a bit, finding that perfect spot as your muscles release the day's tension. Your breathing naturally slows, settling into a rhythm that matches the quiet ebb and flow of the night air through the cottage. Getting comfortable? Better. And in your mind's eye, you see the golden wheat fields waiting for tomorrow's harvest, shimmering in the summer sun like a treasure more precious than gold. Dawn breaks with a chorus of roosters from across the village. Today is no ordinary day. It's the first day of harvest, perhaps the most important moment in the medieval farming year. Success or failure in the next few weeks will determine whether your family eats well during the coming winter or faces the gnawing pain of hunger. You wake instantly, the weight of importance already pressing on your young shoulders. Around you, your family stirs with unusual quickness. No lingering on sleeping pallets today, no slow transition from sleep to wakefulness. Every minute of daylight is precious during harvest. Your mother has risen even earlier than usual, preparing a hearty breakfast, porridge enriched with the last of the honey from last year's hives, and bread spread with a thin layer of precious butter from your cow's milk. Harvest requires energy, and this morning's meal's as generous as your family's resources allow. Eat well, your father says, passing you an extra piece of bread. We won't stop again until midday. Outside, the village is already alive with activity despite the early hour. Families gather their harvesting tools, sickles for cutting the grain, wooden rakes for gathering it, baskets and sheets for carrying. Children run errands, bringing water to those heading to the fields, checking that animals are secured for the day. The collective energy is focused entirely on the enormous task ahead. The reeve moves from house to house, organising the harvest according to long-established custom. Each family will first harvest their own strips in the common fields, but once that's complete, all will work together to bring in the portion of the crop that belongs to the monastery as rent. This arrangement ensures that no family's harvest is neglected while they work on the monastery's lands. "Weather looks fair," the reeve comments as he reaches your cottage. "If it holds, we might finish the wheat in 5 days. 5 days of intense labour from dawn to dusk, every back bent to the task, every hand blistered from gripping tools. But the alternative, rain that flattens the ripened grain or causes it to sprout in the field, is unthinkable." As your family walks to your first wheat strip, the rising sun casts a golden glow across the fields. The wheat stands tall and proud, heavy heads nodding slightly in the gentle morning breeze. It's a beautiful sight, the culmination of months of care and worry, of ploughing and sowing and weeding. Now comes the moment of truth, gathering the precious grain that will become your daily bread. Your father takes position at the edge of the strip, sickle in hand. He grasps a handful of wheat stalks with his left hand and sweeps the sickle with his right, cutting the stalks about halfway up their length. The movement is practiced, efficient, the result of years of experience. Each cut produces a handful of grain-heavy stalks that he lays carefully on the ground behind him. Your mother follows, gathering the cut stalks into bundles that she ties with twisted strands of the wheat itself. These sheaves are then stood upright in groups of 8 or 10, leaning against each other to form small teepee-like structures that allow air to circulate, helping to dry the grain further before it's transported to the threshing floor. Your job, along with your siblings, is to gather any stalks or fallen grain heads that the adults miss. Nothing can be wasted. Each kernel represents food for the winter ahead or seed for next year's planting. You move carefully through the stubble, sharp eyes scanning for golden heads of grain lying on the ground. The sun climbs higher as the morning progresses. Your back begins to ache from constant bending. The initial excitement of harvest gives way to the reality of monotonous, physically demanding labour. Yet there's no question of stopping. The entire village is engaged in the same essential task, each family working their strips, the sound of sickles cutting through stalks creating a rhythmic backdrop to the occasional calls and conversations. By midday, your family has harvested nearly half of your first wheat strip. It's impressive progress, but every adult knows that the pace will slow as the day advances and fatigue sets in. Your mother calls a brief halt for the midday meal, bread, cheese and ale brought to the field in a basket to avoid wasting time returning to the cottage. You sit in the narrow strip of shade provided by the standing wheat, grateful for the momentary rest. Around you, other families are doing the same, small clusters of people gathered at the edges of their strips, talking quietly as they eat. Despite the exhaustion, there's a sense of satisfaction in visible progress, the growing number of sheaves standing in neat formations across the harvested portions of the field. "The grain looks good," your father observes, examining a wheat head picked from a nearby stalk. "Full and heavy, should mill well. Quality matters as much as quantity. Well-formed grain yields more flour when ground at the mill. It also makes better seed for next year's planting." Your father sets aside particularly good-looking sheaves, specifically for seed, marking them with a twist of straw so they won't be mixed with the general harvest. The brief respite ends too soon. Back to work, the afternoon stretching ahead like the wheat itself, seemingly endless rows that must be cut, gathered and bound before you can rest again. The sun beats down, increasing the challenge. Sweat soaks through your simple linen shirt and your throat grows parched despite regular sips from the water skin passed among family members. But you keep going, one stalk at a time, one sheaf at a time, 1 hour at a time. This is the reality of medieval harvest, an all-consuming physical ordeal that must be endured because the alternative is unthinkable. No harvest means no food, and no food means suffering or worse in the months ahead. As the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, your father finally calls a halt to the day's work. Your family's first wheat strip is completely harvested, neat rows of sheaves standing where grain waved in the morning breeze. It's a visible accomplishment, a tangible reward for the day's labour. The walk back to the village is slow, everyone's movements stiff from hours of repetitive bending and cutting, yet there's little time to rest. Animals need feeding, the evening meal must be prepared, and tools require cleaning and sharpening for tomorrow's continuation of the harvest. After a simple supper, more pottage, more bread, perhaps with a bit of bacon added to the pot for extra strength, your father sharpens the family's sickles by lamplight. The metal blade must be kept keen for efficient cutting, reducing the effort needed from already tired arms and backs. Sleep comes quickly that night, your body surrendering to exhaustion almost before your head touches the pallet. But dawn will bring another day just like this one, and another after that, until the entire wheat crop is safely harvested. The next few days follow the same pattern, rising at dawn, working until dusk, falling into bed exhausted only to rise and do it all again. Your family moves from one strip to the next, harvesting your scattered holdings across the common fields. The weather remains favourable, warm and dry, ideal for bringing in the grain. By the 5th day, as the reeve predicted, the village has harvested most of its wheat crop. Now comes the next phase, threshing and winnowing to separate the valuable grain from the straw and chaff. This work is less weather-dependent than cutting, so it can be spread over a longer period, interspersed with harvesting the later ripening crops like barley and oats. Threshing takes place on a special threshing floor, a flat area of hard-packed earth or sometimes wooden planking where the dried sheaves are laid out. Workers use flails, 2 wooden sticks connected by a short length of leather, to beat the grain heads, knocking the kernels free from their husks. It's noisy, dusty work. The rhythmic thwack 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 of flails echoes across the village as each family processes their harvest. Children often help by turning the grain on the threshing floor, ensuring that all sides of the sheaves receive the flail's attention. Smaller children might be tasked with keeping chickens away. The birds are attracted to the scattered grain but would make a mess of the carefully organised process. After threshing comes winnowing, separating the lighter chaff from the heavier grain kernels. This is done by tossing the threshed mixture into the air on a breezy day, allowing the wind to blow away the chaff while the heavier grain falls back onto sheets spread below. It's a skill requiring judgment and experience. Too strong a wind might blow away some grain, too weak and the chaff remains mixed in. Throughout these processes, the monastery's representatives monitor progress. The steward makes regular appearances, sometimes accompanied by the cellarer, the monk responsible for the abbey's food supplies. They estimate yields, calculate the portion due as rent, ensure that the grain is properly processed. Their presence is a constant reminder of the economic relationship that shapes village life. As August advances, the grain harvest continues with barley and oats, followed by peas and beans from the spring planting. Each crop has its own requirements, its own timing, its own processing methods. The work is relentless, but it's also purposeful, directly connected to survival in a way that modern people rarely experience. By the end of August, the bulk of the harvest is complete. The fields stand golden stubbled in the late summer sun, a far cry from their lush green appearance just weeks earlier. Now comes the accounting, measuring the grain, setting aside seed for next year, calculating how much remains for food after the monastery's portion is paid. For your family, this year's harvest is adequate but not abundant. The storm damage to the barley crop reduced your overall yield, and the wheat, while good quality, produced slightly less than hoped. You'll have enough to meet your basic needs: flour for daily bread, seed for next planting, some surplus to sell for necessities you can't produce yourselves. But there will be little extra for comforts or emergencies. This is the typical state for most peasant families in medieval England, existing on the edge of sufficiency, vulnerable to any disruption of the agricultural cycle. A single bad harvest can deplete reserves built up over years of careful management. 2 bad harvests in succession can mean genuine hunger. 3 might mean starvation. Yet, despite this precariousness, there's a moment of celebration when the harvest is finally complete. The village holds a harvest feast, not lavish by modern standards, but more generous than everyday fare. Each family contributes something to the communal meal. There's fresh bread made from the new grain, roasted geese, apples from early ripening trees, perhaps even ale brewed with special care for the occasion. The monastery, understanding the importance of maintaining good relations with its tenants, often provides something special. Wine from its cellars, perhaps, or honey cakes prepared by the abbey's bakers. The priest blesses the gathered food and offers prayers of thanksgiving for the completed harvest. This feast marks a brief pause between the intense labour of harvest and the autumn work still to come, ploughing the stubble fields for winter planting, gathering fruit from the orchards, slaughtering surplus livestock that can't be fed through the winter. Medieval farm life offers few true holidays, but harvest completion is one moment when the community allows itself to exhale collectively. As summer transitions to autumn, the rhythm of farm work shifts. Days grow shorter, limiting the hours available for outdoor labour. The weather becomes more unpredictable, with fog and rain more frequent. The urgency of harvest gives way to the steady pace of preparation for winter. Your family turns attention to the garden plot beside your cottage, harvesting the last vegetables that will be stored for winter use. Some, like cabbages, will be preserved by salting or pickling. Root vegetables might be stored in cool, dry conditions. Herbs are hung to dry from the cottage rafters, providing both flavour for winter meals and remedies for common ailments. The orchard yields its bounty of apples and pears. Some will be eaten fresh, a welcome addition to the otherwise plain diet. Others will be carefully stored in the coolest part of the cottage, laid out so they don't touch each other, checked regularly for any signs of rot. The remainder will be dried in slices, providing a source of natural sweetness during the winter months when fresh fruit is just a memory. This is also the time for gathering wild foods, nuts from the forest edge, berries from hedgerows, mushrooms from damp areas where they flourish in the cooling weather. These foraged items supplement the farm's production, adding variety and nutrients to the winter diet. As nights grow longer, indoor work becomes more prominent. Evenings are spent processing the harvest, grinding smaller amounts of grain in a hand quern to supplement flour from the mill, sorting and cleaning vegetables for storage, making simple cheese from the cow's milk that will keep longer than the fresh liquid. The sheep's wool, sheared in early summer and now processed, is ready for spinning. Your mother and sisters work wool into thread using drop spindles, their fingers moving with practiced precision despite the dim light. The resulting yarn will be woven into cloth for family use, or possibly for sale, depending on quantity and quality. Your father and brother use the evening hours to repair tools and equipment, to fashion simple household items from wood, to mend harnesses and yokes that will be needed when ploughing begins again. Nothing is wasted, neither materials nor time. The survival economy of the medieval farm requires constant attention and care. As autumn deepens toward winter, the agricultural year begins to circle back to its beginning. The wheat field, left fallow this past season, is ploughed and planted with grain that will germinate before winter's cold sets in, then lie dormant until spring brings renewed growth. This winter wheat will provide the earliest harvest in the coming year, a crucial head start in the annual race to produce enough food. With the major fieldwork complete, the monastery might again call upon its tenants for labour service, perhaps helping with construction or repair projects at the abbey, working in its extensive gardens, or assisting with processing its much larger harvest. These obligations never entirely disappear, though they're managed to avoid interference with the most critical periods of the agricultural calendar. As winter approaches, the pace of life slows somewhat. Shorter days limit outdoor work. Inclement weather keeps people inside more frequently. The cottage, which felt cramped and confining during summer's heat, now becomes a welcome shelter against cold winds and rain. The fire burns more constantly now, requiring a steady supply of firewood. Gathering and chopping wood becomes a daily task, usually assigned to older children or adults who aren't occupied with more skilled work. The precious store of firewood is protected carefully without it. Surviving winter would be impossible. Food consumption is carefully managed. The harvest bounty is gradually parcelled out through winter's lean months, with portions growing smaller as spring's renewal becomes more distant. Your mother knows exactly how much grain, how many preserved vegetables, how much dried fruit must last until fresh food becomes available again. She adjusts meals accordingly, stretching supplies with careful planning and occasional ingenuity. This is the rhythm of life on a medieval farm, a constant cycle of planting and harvest, of abundance and scarcity, of intense labour and relative rest. It's a life intimately connected to the natural world, to the turning of seasons, to the subtle changes in light and temperature that signal time's passage. It's also a life deeply embedded in community, the village working together at crucial moments, sharing resources and labour, supporting each other through individual crises. For all its hardships, the physical toll, the precarious existence, the subordination to monastery authority, this life has a coherence and purpose that connects you to both land and people in ways modern existence rarely achieves. You know precisely why you work: to feed yourself and your family, to maintain your place in the community, to fulfill obligations that secure your tenancy. The results of your labour are visible, tangible, directly related to survival and well-being. As night falls on the medieval farm, your family gathers once more around the hearth. The fire's light casts long shadows on the cottage walls. Outside, an autumn wind sighs through bare tree branches, and somewhere in the distance an owl calls its haunting note. Inside, there's warmth, security, the quiet murmur of familiar voices discussing tomorrow's tasks. You settle onto your sleeping pallet, pulling a woolen blanket over you against the growing chill of autumn nights. Your body relaxes, releasing the day's tensions, sinking deeper into the simple comfort of rest after honest labour. Your breathing slows naturally, finding its own gentle rhythm. Your eyelids grow heavy as the fire's light flickers across the cottage ceiling. Images from the year's cycle drift through your mind, ploughing fresh furrows in spring soil, sheep grazing on green hillsides, golden wheat rippling in summer breezes, apples hanging ripe and red in the orchard. These are the landscapes of your existence, the familiar territories of the medieval farm that forms your world. Sleep approaches, wrapping around you like a warm embrace. Your muscles release completely. Your thoughts grow hazy and distant. The sounds of your family settling for the night fade into a pleasant background murmur. The weight of your body seems to dissolve as you drift deeper into that peaceful place between wakefulness and dreams. And as you finally surrender to sleep, there's a profound rightness to this simple ending of the day. For all its challenges and hardships, the medieval farm offers a life of direct connection to the earth that provides sustenance, to the community that provides support, to the seasonal rhythms that provide structure and meaning. It's a life far removed from modern comforts, but it holds its own deep satisfactions, its own quiet wisdom about what truly matters in human existence. Your breathing deepens, slow and steady now. The cottage, the village, the fields and forests beyond, all fade from awareness as sleep claims you completely. Tomorrow will bring another day of labour in this ancient cycle of cultivation and harvest, but for now, there's only rest. Sweet, deep, well-earned rest, carrying you gently into dreams beneath a medieval sky where stars shine with a brilliance rarely seen in our modern illuminated world. Sleep now, rest easy. The day is done, the work complete, the cycle continuing as it has for countless generations before and will for generations to come. This is the true heritage of the medieval farm, not just techniques and tools, but a way of being in the world that acknowledges both its challenges and its gifts, that finds meaning in necessary labour, that builds community through shared purpose. Drift now, deeper and deeper into peaceful sleep, as the medieval farm and all who work its soil have done since time immemorial.